This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly, another one of those Man City-Real Madrid games at the Etihad. For a while it looked like City were Real Madriding Madrid, suffering, conceding chance after chance, but somehow winning. Haaland scoring a lovely one and a penalty either side of Kylian Mbappe's hilarious miss it. But then, checks Wikipedia, returning City legend Brahim Diaz and Jude Bellingham in injury time mean Real Madrid do it again, and without virtually all their defenders. Also, a thunderbolt from Weston McKennie helps Juve to a 2-1 win over PSV. Dortmund win convincingly at Sporting, and PSG have a comfortable win over Brest. In the FA Cup, they're still playing at Exeter. We'll have live updates, while Palace win at Doncaster on Monday. There's the most subs ever made by one side in a game, a lovely giant killing story, your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Nicky Bandini.
Hiya.
And bonjour, ça va, Philippe Auclair.
Bonjour, ça va, Max.
Yes, let's start the Etihad then. Man City 2, Real Madrid 3. I mean, a really fun game, Barry. I couldn't work out if this was a classic or if AI had made a Man City Real Madrid Champions League game. it sort of had all the things you'd expect, but I was never really sort of surprised or in the edge of my seat because I kind of thought all these things would probably happen.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's a good way of putting it. It was definitely a tremendously entertaining game. It swung this way and that. Real Madrid sort of roared out of the traps. Probably should have gone ahead, scored a couple of goals, but it was City who took the lead. And then they had a good spell. Probably should have extended the lead, but didn't. And then Real Madrid equalised and so on and so forth. So it was very entertaining in that regard. I wouldn't say it was a classic, mainly because there was too many big name players missing, specifically in Real Madrid's defence, which was quite make do and mend, and too many good players missed too many good opportunities, and there were just too many mistakes, and I think that's ultimately what cost City another capitulation to go with the several they've had already this season, sort of where they've been unable to close out games. Brighton, Feyenoord, Brentford, PSG, Man United, all sort of spring to mind. And this is another one to go with that collection. And it's kind of odd. I think City will think they should have won. I think they could have lost by a lot more. And the game is nicely poised going into the second leg, but it's difficult to see City. Well, it's difficult to see either, so I'm keeping a clean sheet at the Bernabeu. So City could pull it out of the bag yet, but they are playing these, sort of Champions League equivalent of cockroaches. I mean that in the nicest possible way. They just cannot be killed off.
No, they can't. I mean, I don't know what you made of the defending, Philippe, but for the third, it's there are three really basic errors, really basic errors.
Yes, I think there's probably, if there's a degree beyond basic, is there one? Maybe
rudimentary? Would you say rudimentary?
Oh, yeah, it is really rudimentary.
Yeah.
Mixture of tired minds and tired legs, I suppose. Because on the face of it, to be honest, Manchester City's defence should have been more solid than Real Madrid's, considering the absences. I know that, Ruben Diaz has been out for a while and so forth, having to put Luis back and so forth. But honestly, it was comedic. It was actually hilarious, I have to say, if you were not a Manchester City fan. But the thing is that, could you not feel that something like this was going to happen? It's now reached that level when you think, they're leading 2-1, it's going to finish 3-2. It's reached that level where the players are starting to think that's what's going to happen. And the defending, what can you say? There was no defending to talk about, even if we shouldn't underestimate the fact that they looked physically tired. I don't know if you had the same feeling as well, that for some reason Real looked actually fresher, despite bringing on that spring chicken Luka Modric in the second half, but they looked fresher. There was actually a remark that Clarence Seedorf made, quite late last night after talking about the game, and he said the most concerning thing for Manchester City is that it's not as if they didn't try to hold on to their advantage after being 2-1 up. The problem is that they were unable to do so, and that they seem not to be programmed. And I think when we talk about the problems which are brought on by systematized football, we often thought only about the creative side of it, like it's too predictable. They do not have when a couple of players are missing the inspiration or whatever, the sharpness, they can't create anything. But it also goes for the defending. And the system is not working anymore. And you wonder if it is not a breakdown in a belief system. I mean, we're going to go to a very, very deep. Maybe those players are now agnostic. Maybe they're actually thinking God is dead or something like that. And I know I'm just trying to inch my way into Suits Corner in the next private eye. but the fact that the belief system is no longer working is clear. So when we talk about defending, it's not just the fact that they were not in place, they didn't track back, blah, 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 blah. No, they just haven't got it in their minds anymore.
I think that just chimes really with what Pep was saying at the end of the game when he was being interviewed and asked about basically throwing it away again. He said, well, it's happened many times before. He repeated that over and over again in different interviews. It's happened many times before. And it really, like, he spoke like someone who is not even at the end of his tether, is almost at this point of resignation to it. The way he was talking about it was like, well, I clearly don't have the answer to it because it's happened many times before. And I think that belief is a really interesting way to put it, Philippe, I think, because on the British TV commentary, well, on Amazon Prime commentary, I guess, last night, when it was 2-1 to City, that someone, I can't remember who it was, someone said something about, Ancelotti's raised eyebrow speaks 1,000 words or whatever. And I was thinking, Ancelotti's been here plenty and seen his team dig themselves out plenty. And the next thing you know, they score 2 goals. And I think that's the point with Madrid. Madrid's belief system is absolutely undimmed. Madrid's belief system is always, we've got these great players and we can find something from somewhere. It was such an odd game. I found it a really entertaining game, but it was such an odd game because basically both teams kept scoring at the points when they should have been at their lower ebb, at the points when the other team looked in control. But I do think there was absolutely, belief is an interesting way to frame it, because I think that Madrid, for all they've had going on, and they aren't a team having a great season. In fact, if anyone should be feeling nervous, maybe you could argue it should be Ancelotti, who looks like he could potentially lose his job. Even while winning La Liga, he could lose his job. And yet, really, at the end of that game, they just kept thinking, but we're still Real Madrid. We can still score 2 goals. And Man City, for whatever reason, let themselves make some really poor decisions in the last few minutes.
It's like they have to reboot Man City, just sort of turn them all off and turn them back on again, and hope that works.
I'm kind of reminded of that time when many years ago, Laurie Sanchez used to manage Fulham, and they weren't doing very well at all, but he always used to argue that if games only lasted 75 minutes, they'd be near the top of the league. And you're going, well, yes, Laurie, but unfortunately for you. So maybe that's a tack Pep could have tried while trying to excuse his team's collapses.
It's an interesting stat, because you messaged during the game, sort of halfway through, Philippe, is Bellingham playing, and he didn't do a whole lot. He grew into the game, I guess. But this stat from Edo the 16th on Twitter, whoever that may be, non-penalty game winners in stoppage time. Ronaldo 7 across his entire career, Messi 6 across his entire career, Bellingham 6 in the last 2 years.
Oh my goodness!
This idea that he is. I feel like some people can say the word clutch. It doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth, but I believe it's the right word to say. That he has that thing, which is quite hard to sort of pinpoint what it is, but he has it.
Talent, No.
Well, yeah, okay.
No.
Well,
It's true.
Talent helps.
It's true. It's those the famous quip about Graham Gooch asking Ian Botham after he took a wicket, coming back I think from suspension for smoking weed, and he asked him, "Who writes your scripts?" And that's what you can say about Bellingham, because remember, the goal in the Euro as well. I mean,
I'd say Ian Botham's scripts have changed over time. That's a separate issue,
slightly.
Yeah, carry on.
Lord Botham.
Yeah,
let's not forget Lord Botham. It is a very special talent. It's also perhaps he's one of those players who has the physical and mental resources. He doesn't tire mentally either, and therefore he makes absolutely sure that he will be at the right place at the right time. This is a very, very, very good talent to have, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was certain he was exhausted all Euros, as I kept tweeting before he kept scoring goals in the last minute. And then I don't know what you liked more, Nicky, out of Mbappe's hilarious miss kick or Brahim Diaz not celebrating and everyone checking. Hang on, who did he? When were the Brahim Diaz City years? I've forgotten them. 5 appearances. No goals between 2016 and 2019. And then Diaz, obviously you don't celebrate against your former club when you score, but if someone else scores a winner in time, you can strut around like a peacock.
I thought exactly that, Max. It was funny how he didn't celebrate his goal. And then I don't know. I can't tell where the over-analysis is kicking in, but was that a bit of a Haaland swagger that he was doing, that strut after the winning goal?
Mm-hmm.
Was that another little coded dig from Diaz even amongst it? Yeah, it was very odd to go from one to the other. I try not to judge people too much on this stuff because, yes, he didn't play that much for Man City, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have personal feelings towards people he worked with and towards people who he liked at the club and who he doesn't want to rub it in their faces in their home ground. So who knows? There could be things there, but it was odd that he went from one thing to the other. I think the fact that Mbappe miskicked the first goal was Madrid's first goal was almost symptomatic of how this slightly odd game was, because there was some really good stuff in there. And actually, I thought that Vinicius, again, sensational in parts for Madrid, and some of his best play was happening at the start of the game when they didn't score. But then when he assists the goal at the end, was he really trying to assist it, or was he trying to chip to score himself and it doesn't quite go in? Like, the whole game felt a bit like that, things that weren't quite working. Arguably, the one standout exception to that was Haaland, who took his goals very, very well, even the penalty very well taken. And of course, he hadn't scored against Madrid before, so that was a monkey off his back. But it's reflective of who this Madrid team are. They're a very uneven team. They've got absolutely walloped a few times this season by Barcelona, and they've had some low moments. But there's just so much attacking quality, so much, even when the defence is, as has already been talked about, a total mess with half your defence is midfielders and playing out of position, that you still basically just know that you can find a goal some way, somehow. And Bellingham's ability to score at the end is its own thing as well. But yeah, when you've got Vinicius, who very possibly is the best player in the world, and by the way, let's not gloss completely over that little tifo, as they'd call it in English, the choreography with Rodri on it, and a clear dig at him that I think he responded to pretty well. I think he's very possibly the best in the world. Mbappe has been considered the best in the world for a long time, and I think he's had a bit of a rough introduction in Madrid, but starting to find his feet. Bellingham, the whole attack, there's just so much there that you know that even when it's not quite firing right, it's a decent chance they'll find ways to put the ball in the net.
Max, if you played, that game where you've got to guess where the ball is, and you have a play. Okay. Now, if you took the picture of the moment that Mbappe connects with the ball, you erase the ball and you present that, it would look like it's the perfect posture to score one of the world's greatest goals ever.
Yeah.
And then he scores. It's not even a shinner. It's between a shinner and a near. And it's
and it took half an hour to get in. Everyone's like Edison's on his heels, and you're like, everyone knows what's going to happen, but no one can do anything about it.
That's quite magnificent. We have a sort of foia morta, but that was absolutely magnificent.
And if he had struck it cleanly, might Edison have saved it? Because Edison was
exactly.
so clearly wrong-footed by it going
Possibly.
wrong.
Possibly.
But we've got to ask about, we've got to talk about this tifo, because it was ridiculous, and the way these things bite you on the arse when you do them. The other thing, did you notice that I've always wondered who actually pays for these and who actually makes them?
Well, I think
fan groups.
I think it's fan groups. Like Newcastle have this crowd called War Flags who do really good tifos, and I, as far as I know, various fan groups chip in and pay for them, and then they bring them to the stadium before the game, or I think maybe the day before the game, or if not early in the day of the game, and put them where they want them. But that was funny last night. Stop crying your heart out, and a picture of Rodri kissing the Ballon d'Or.
I mean, you might as well just said, "Hey Vinicius, I dare you not to be shit tonight." Barney wrote, actually, Barry, that he thought that was Haaland's best game for City, given the stage, given the opposition. Haaland, he said, was very good in a Haaland kind of way, total Haaland, a masterpiece in minimalism without subtlety. Has anyone ever completed 2 passes an entire half against Real Madrid, but at the same time weirdly dominated the play? Until I read that, obviously I read a Barney column and then have to agree with it, but I thought he was good, but I didn't see him being the best I've seen of Haaland, but maybe he's right.
I wouldn't have thought it was his best game for City. I think it's his best game in a while, but it's quite a low bar because he does have a habit of going missing from these big games, and he obviously never scored against Real Madrid. So to get 2, and I thought his first goal was terrific. I was like, when Guardiola started the move deep in his own half, and then he was there to chest Grealish's dink over the top into Haaland's path. I was like, how the hell did he get there?
He was such a good goal.
Yeah.
The pass from Grealish is amazing.
Yeah. And I felt a bit sorry for Grealish having to go off injured, because he got a rare start against very exalted opposition and was playing well. So he'll be peed off that it, he had to go off within whatever the injury was. But no, I'm going to disagree with Barney on this one.
I enjoyed. Foden came on, didn't he, and actually did really well for that penalty. I'm not sure what Ceballos is complaining about, having sort of cut Phil Foden in half for that penalty. And even afterwards, Ancelotti went, "No, that's a penalty. This is quite a good ref, and that was a penalty." It is worth mentioning, Philippe. We've touched on it. Alaba, Carvajal, Militao, Rudiger, Lucas Vazquez, all out. Sort of makes Tottenham look like they just don't have any injury problems at the back, doesn't it? That list.
Yes, that's very true. And you could see how Tchouaméni is... Asensio was once again did as well as could be expected of him, as he has done in the past few weeks. Tchouaméni looks like it really is not his position of predilection, to say the least. Now, I'm going to be naughty and ask you a question. Do you know anything about the fitness of those Real Madrid players and who might be able perhaps to be available again next week? My feeling was that it's going to be the same, is that Ancelotti doesn't have any other solutions than what he has at his disposal right now. But again, you will notice one thing. He has never used this as an excuse or even an explanation for the poor performances of his team. Never. Which is absolutely remarkable. I mean,
but some managers are like that, Philippe. Unai Emery's the same.
Well, it shows, but that shows confidence in your players to start with, and that contributes to the belief system, doesn't it?
I mean, I suppose they are top of La Liga, so if you're top of La Liga, it's easier not. I mean, they haven't been amazing, but it's easier to not blame, to not make excuses when you're top of the league, I guess.
When we talk about not making excuses, we probably need Sid for the full background, but Madrid are on a full-on war with the referees in Spain, and so there are some
Yeah.
kinds of excuses that have perhaps been coming out in that conversation. But I don't think, again, Ancelotti is the hub of that. And I think that this was something that Clarence Seedorf was talking about after the game last night, about how he was talking about it from the frame of how Pep Guardiola was responding to the game, because I really don't think that this result condemns City. I think the way that Madrid are, the way that defence is so diminished at the moment, it is far from inconceivable that you can go to Madrid and outscore them just because of those vulnerabilities. But I think that listening to Ancelotti and Guardiola after the game, when you've got Pep saying, basically, well, this just keeps happening and I don't know what to do about it, it doesn't make you feel like he believes they can go there and get a result. Whereas I think even if Madrid had lost, you still would have seen Ancelotti be the same even keel that he always is. And I think that's something that is just the nature of them. Pep has never been the most even keel. He's always very intense. He's always I can't find a better word than intense right now, but he's that energy. But I do think that at this moment, perhaps City need a bit more of that Ancelotti energy of, you know what, calm down. We're still brilliant footballers. We still are very capable. Let's keep our heads and keep in mind that this is still an open tie. It's a 1-goal difference.
Do you think that he's himself losing some of the belief?
Yeah, no, I really do.
And that in this case, when you have Ancelotti, who in some ways is an absolute genius of a manager, but he's the arch pragmatist. He's the man who always finds the right solution to the right problem, to the right question. Whereas Pep is the one who wants to ask the questions all the time. And then suddenly that's not the case anymore. And maybe he's also lost that grip on his own beliefs.
I mean, he looked so, when they scored the third, and it just panned to the dugout, and there's him and the guy who, like others, I always, for a second, think is Kevin Keegan, were both so slumped and just there, literally, it was just, I suppose it must be so weird for him. I mean, it must just be so weird for Pep to be going through this. I can't think of a moment in his career, like playing, managing, ever, to be in this kind of spiral, which does make it, I don't know what you think, Barry, it makes it totally fascinating.
It is fascinating. I mean, at the Leyton Orient game on Saturday, I don't think he sat in the dugout at all. I think he spent the whole time standing on the edge of his technical area. But the Orient fans were giving him loads about getting sacked in the morning, blah, blah, blah. And there was a pathway between the front of the stand nearest us and the fence surrounding the pitch. And there were loads of fans just ambling up and down, going to the loo or going to get refreshments or whatever throughout the game. And at one point during the second half, this big burly bloke with a pork pie hat and a very long ZZ Top style beard sort of just decided to wander up towards the City dugout and started giving Pep a load of abuse and, giving the Nescafe sign. And Pep could hear every word he was saying and turned around and started giving him loads back. And it's just quite unusual. Yeah. And he must be thinking, like, who the hell are you to be giving me this sort of abuse? And your man wasn't really ushered away by stewards or anything. He just said whatever it was he had to say, none of it complimentary, and then just wandered off down towards back down towards the corner. It was really funny.
Anyway, City have got Newcastle at the weekend, then Real Madrid. I think Real go to Osasuna on Saturday. We'll find out next week who will go through, won't we? And that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll do the rest of the Champions League games last night. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. Let's start in France. Philippe, Brest 0, PSG 3. What did you make of this? Presumably the whole of France was supporting Brest.
I think not just the whole of France. I think outside of France, everybody was supporting Brest. But it was, to be honest, it was the draw that everybody feared. That's the last thing Brest wanted, was to play PSG, whom they haven't beaten in donkey's years. And that's a very, very old donkey, right? That donkey has been put to rest for a long time ago. They had just lost 5-2 to them in the league. I think they had 2 draws and 18 defeats out of the last 20 games. There was not this element of, this is fantastic, this is new ground, breaking new ground for us to play against a rival that probably we will never have a chance to play against again. And so you put all that together and you thought, I was really fearing for them as soon as the draw was made. But, well, PSG, if you talk about the game, PSG did one thing that they don't do, or they haven't done very much until then, which is to start the game on the front foot at quite a high pace and really putting Brest under pressure, and Brest were not able to deal with that. They really, even the fact I was looking at the pitch thinking, well, it looks a bit like a 5th-day pitch on a test match, so maybe that will even things a little bit. There were loads of dry patches and so forth.
It'll turn, won't it, if you get it in the right areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you had those banners, and these banners had definitely been made by the fans, by the way. Impossible is not Brestois, and all these sort of things. But the public, by the way, was absolutely astonishing from the first to the last minute. They had a ball. Absolutely, they had a ball.
They did, didn't they? Because when Dembele scored the second, like at the time, the whole Brest fans are swirling their scarves, bouncing up and down. It was like the goal didn't happen. They just carried on. Like, here we go. We're here having a great time.
They carried on. And it's very rare, actually, that you see, because they all have the red and white scarves, some homemade, by the way, and it's very rare that you see 3 sides of a stadium doing it at the same time. It was so beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And I think that's the kind of memories that people will keep from it. And there was a reaction from them after Vitinha scored. And they hit the post. I think Sima hit the post. Ludovic Ajorc had a great game again. What a player he is. And let's hope they can get him for good, because he's only on loan there. But then they were a little bit over-enthusiastic, exposed themselves, and PSG, who suddenly have got a Dembele who knows where the net is, which is honestly something we thought would never happen, ever. And to be honest, he might soon forget where the net is, because that's Dembele we're talking about. And then that's it. And they I wouldn't say they crumbled, because they fought until the very end. Eric Roy finished the game with something like in a formation where there were about 9 strikers, but they tried and tried and tried. But I'm afraid that the writing was on that wall from the moment that the draw was made, because I don't. Can you imagine for the players how much more difficult it must be? You've just been beaten by those guys, and you're meeting them again in the Champions League. It's not as if you're meeting, I don't know, Borussia Dortmund or whatever, and then you suddenly think, well, actually, we don't know. They don't know anything about us. We might surprise them. The problem is that they know everything about each other, and basically the result was quite logical.
I thought the scoreline flattered PSG a little bit. Brest could have gone ahead when Donnarumma hoofed that clearance straight at Ajorc's head, and it sort of ricocheted the wrong side of the post. They had 3 very good chances. Sima hitting the post and then brought a good save out of Donnarumma later on. Achraf Hakimi almost scored a comedy own goal, but hit the post. So I think Brest are unlucky not to have a goal, at least one goal to take back to Paris.
Yes, I'd agree on that, but there was not one moment in the game where I felt they're going to do what they have done to so many others in the competition so far. Because they were also put under an awful lot of pressure. And this PSG team, anyway, is a bit of a new beast that we got to get used to it. It's a more dangerous beast, and it doesn't crumble as easily as the previous incarnations. But anyway, yes, with the score flattered, it would have been lovely if they could have got a goal, but it was not to be in. Well, the tie is over, basically.
Well, but if Brest do get through, what a collapse we're in store for next week, eh? We can only hope. To Turin, Juventus 2, PSV 1. I think, Nicky, we should start with just how beautifully Weston McKennie struck the opening goal for Juve.
Yeah, that was a really, really well taken goal, wasn't it? And
well, I don't know if you heard Monday's pod, but if Wilson was here, he'd have found another Juventus player whose ear was offside.
This is in relation to the Birmingham player. It's Iwato, who scored a similar-ish goal, a better version of this McKennie goal, but it is just the pure technique. And we know these guys can kick the ball beautifully, but you don't see it that often. And when they do, it's just so pleasing, I think, Nicky.
Yeah, and to strike it so cleanly on it's a long rebound, but effectively it's come back on the rebound. It was a really nice goal for Juventus in general, because the genesis of it is Federico Gatti, who's a centre back, pressing high up the pitch, winning the ball, and being involved in getting it back to McKennie. The whole moment felt like, oh, that's the kind of football that Thiago Motta wants his team to play. And I guess in contrast to perhaps the City Madrid game where you could look at it and say there's a lot of players in that matchup where you're thinking, oh, this is a swan song for them. This Juventus team is young. It's I think the average age of the starting 11 was 25. That they are a team that's got ideas, but it's been so rare that we've seen them in any sort of consistent way. Under Motta this season, it hasn't been a consistently performing team. They weren't a consistently performing team even over the course of these 90 minutes. So you had this wonderful goal, and then you had letting PSV get back into it through Ivan Perisic. And in the end, Juventus win through Mbangula, and you're not quite sure what to take away from it all, because yes, it was a lovely, lovely goal from McKennie, and definitely seek it out because it's a beautifully clean strike, as everyone's been saying, from outside the box, really straight arrowed into the top corner of the net. But I still don't know how confident I am that Juventus will even make it through the tie. They should. They're better than PSV. They definitely should. And PSV themselves, another team who you could say are missing a lot of players. Malik Tillman, the American, who's been brilliant for them in midfield, is missing. Another American, all of our Americans this tie, but Ricardo Pepi, who's been very effective off the bench for them. I think he's actually their top scorer, also injured. I think he's out till the end of the season now. So a diminished PSV team in a sense, and Juventus didn't close them out of the tie in the way that perhaps they should have been able to. So I think it's still pretty open, this one. But yes, a very nice goal from Weston McKennie.
Nicky, were you surprised? Actually, it goes for all of you. Were you surprised by actually how good PSV were at times, and the problems, the extent of the problems they posed to Juve? I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was one step beyond, so to speak. But they actually, even after they went 1-0 down, they were extremely threatening. They were very well organized. And I'm like you. I think it's going to be very tough for Juve in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Bosz is a good manager. They're top of the league in the Eredivisie. They're playing very, very well domestically. And I've said that PSV had injuries. Listen, Juventus have got their own defensive injury crisis. Bremer's out. Juan Cabal's out. Those are both long-term, but also Cambiaso and Kalulu both went out recently. So their defense is about as makeshift as Real Madrid's is. But at a lower quality as well. So they have got defensive injury problems. But it's it feels like a bit of a pivotal moment for Juventus this last part of the season, because Motta's come in from Bologna, where he clearly achieved something amazing, got them into the Champions League, playing really interesting football that was very flexible, all about position swapping, very modern. He's tried to bring that to Juventus, and there's been times when we've seen these glimpses of it, and I think the McKennie's goal absolutely does epitomise the best of it, because again, Gatti is a centre-back, and he's all the way up, winning the ball, capitalising on a mistake with the press to win the ball, and then getting down to the byline to cut it back. But the overall consistency of the play just isn't there at all. And it feels like it could cost him his job, certainly if they miss the Champions League. And right now they're fifth, which may or may not be good enough to get into the Champions League next season. And if you do lose your job, then does the whole project go out the window? But I'm saying all this, and they are an interesting project in that, again, very young starting 11. But it does feel like a project where they've made some sacrifices over the summer that have kind of all backfired. You look at a player like Dean Huyson, who's allowed to leave and go to the Premier League, where he's doing very well for next to nothing. someone who is an embodiment of this next gen project they've had going, where they have their next gen side that now plays in the lower divisions and produces these great talents. But instead of developing those players and bringing them through like we thought they were going to, they sold a lot of them in the summer to bring in a couple of players like Douglas Luiz, who hasn't been a success really from Villa, expensive signing, and Koopmeiners from Atalanta, who I really have such a high opinion of as a player, but again, has really not shown his best so far in Turin. So they're at an odd moment where it's not quite clear if the project's working. And I do think this next part of the season, the last part of the season, is going to have a defining impact for Motta personally, and also for which way this project is facing in the summer.
Also was the moment that I realised that Ivan Perisic was playing for PSV, or still playing at all, I'd say. But what a brilliant first touch and not a bad finish either.
He was really good, just not on the goal. Like he had a really good game, as did De Jong up front. The two old timers in that team definitely played well.
Sporting 0, Dortmund 3. What did you make of this one, Baz?
I won't lie, I only saw the highlights package of this morning, and it struck me as a game of two halves. Sporting had 3 good chances in the first half, smacked one off the bar from distance. Conrad Harder had a shot from distance that seemed to swerve just before it got to Gregor Kobel, who stuck out an arm and was very lucky to keep it out, I think. Quite fortunate save, but a good save. And Harder had a pullback to Pedro somebody or other, sorry, can't read my writing, on the edge of the area. His weak shot was his shot was very weak, and he should have done better. And then Borussia Dortmund hit their stride. Adeyemi, Gittins, pretty good. Julian Brandt. And Guirassy scored a great header for a cross in from the right. And
Brilliant.
Fabulous.
Just a fabulous header, textbook, crossed it back in the direction it came, over the keeper and into the top corner. So, looks like the tie is over. And again, like Brest, I think that the scoreline slightly flattered Borussia Dortmund.
And we'll let full credit to anyone at our next live show wearing a Sporting shirt with something or other on the back.
Just to stress again how Serhou Guirassy was once again absolutely magnificent, because not only did he score this incredible header, which means his neck muscles, I don't know, they're something else, to be able to hit the ball with such power when you're actually lobbing the goalkeeper is quite extraordinary. But also the assist, the cross.
Oh yeah, for Pascal Gross. Yeah,
for Pascal Gross, and I actually loved Pascal Gross' volley because it's with the thigh, but he means it. It's not a Mbappe moment like a Nia Shinner. It's a thigh, but he means it to be, and he meets it really beautifully. But the cross is absolutely superb by Guirassy. And I was talking with some German friends before the game who were all telling me that Borussia Dortmund, they're not in the greatest of place at the moment. There are loads of players who are off their game. And it seems that one, the players who were off their game, like Adeyemi, for example, they're back. Julian Brandt as well had a very good game, and it might be the game they needed to actually spark the season again. But again, Serhou Guirassy, now top goal scorer in the Champions League at the moment. 10 goals in 9. That's pretty impressive.
That Brandt and Adeyemi counter-attacking combo to score the third goal was brilliant as well.
Yeah. Philippe, you wrote a piece about Man City earning more than Aston Villa in the Champions League despite finishing 14 places behind them. Are you finding holes in the new format?
Well, the thing is that it's nothing new, that it's not just sporting merit which is being rewarded financially in the Champions League. The fact is that the new formula, the problem it has is that there's a massive rise in the money which is distributed. 25% basically, from 2 billion to 2.5 billion. And the thing is that the way it's distributed, far too much is distributed on the merit of the so-called market pool, the old market pool, which is the size of your TV market, but also on the UEFA ranking coefficients, which means you reward clubs which have done well in the past, and you don't necessarily reward the clubs which are really doing well in that particular season, as they should be, which is why PSG got more money than Lille, which is why Manchester City got more money than Aston Villa, which is why PSG got shitloads more money than Brest, who were really the team of the competition until this knockout phase. And you can carry on. You look at the case of Celtic. You look at the case of RB Leipzig for me is absolutely appalling because they were rubbish. They were kicked out of the competition, yet they've made more money out of the competition so far than 6 of the clubs which qualify for the knockout rounds. And it's purely based on what's happened in the past. So the end result is that you've got the clubs which were in the club, the clubs which are in the club are doing very well indeed. And even if they fail, they're doing better than some clubs which are doing better. And the other thing is that when the new format was announced, which has got some good sides to it, and the first one to hold my hand is to recognize it, you thought when it's going from 32 teams to 36 teams and so many more games, you think, well, that's a chance to have more national champions in. But there's only one extra national champion. There's only one slot. The rest goes to the same old.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up, and the money which is offered, and just I'll finish with that, but the money which is offered by this competition also is of such magnitude that those teams from lesser leagues which manage to qualify for it, and well done to them, find themselves with a financial advantage over their rivals in the domestic league, which is such that they have no rivals left, that they win the league year on year on year on year on.
I thought that was such an interesting point because you just, obviously we don't spend any time thinking about the Slovakian league or the Serbian league, and then you find out that actually, or whatever, and so actually, when we see these teams, they're the plucky underdog in the Champions League. Let's hope young boys can do it or whatever. But actually, it turns out that perhaps the young boys are a bad example. I don't know, but
no, they're a very good example.
And they just blitz their league. So not only you're ruining football leagues all over Europe, basically.
You're absolutely doing the opposite of what you set out to do. I mean, the case of young boys, they're actually so bad this year that even with the extra money, young boys basically make about twice as much money as the next club in the league, the Swiss league, which has got, believe it or not, huge financial problems. And the same goes for Slovan Bratislava. The same goes for Celtic. The same goes for, Red Star Belgrade is just ridiculous. They are champions. They take part in the Champions League or the Europa League, and then they get the money which enables them to be champions again, which enables them to qualify for the next Champions League, which makes them, and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So the system self-reproduces, and in the end, what suffers the most is domestic leagues, which nobody is interested in anymore. And so which is why the system doesn't work.
And that'll do for part 2. Back in a second. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Pudsey says, will Exeter Forest be finished before you record the pod? This game went on forever. There was already 10 minutes injury time before Awoniyi got quite a bad injury. I think he broke his nose, so I hope he's okay. By the end of extra time, it was just before 11 p.m. I had Matt Upson on co-coms for the international audience. He sounded exhausted. It was very, very funny. Nuno in the dugout during the penalties, he looked back to Dying Jedi. He was sort of misty, and it was anyway. Exeter put up a good old fight there, Baz, in that game, but ultimately wasn't to be.
Unlike Arne Slot, Nuno did bring the big guns on a trip down to Devon, and he needed them in the end, really, because he fielded a second-string side, or a largely second-string side, but he was able to call on some big-name players off the bench, and they got through by the skin of their teeth on penalties, and now they will, their home tie against Ipswich in the 5th round, which you would probably expect them to win. And I think this FA Cup draw, it's quite exciting, actually. We could have an interesting winner of the FA Cup this season, because no Liverpool, no Arsenal, no Chelsea, and out of sorts Man U and out of sorts Man City. So it's up for grabs.
Yeah, there's a great thread by someone called George Thorpe, BBC journalist, who sent it to me. He says, when you look back at all the finals since 1985, only 2 of the current 16 remaining, Man United and Man City, have won the FA Cup. 6 others, Villa, Cardiff, Palace, Millwall, Newcastle and Forest, have reached the final but lost. It's guaranteed to drop by 2 for the 6th round. as 4 of the losing finalists play each other, we could have a scenario where nearly half the last 8 won't have been in an FA Cup final for several decades. And it's got a list of where the non-Manchester teams last reached the FA Cup final. Bournemouth and Argyle never. Wolves 1960, Burnley 62, Preston 64, Fulham 75, Ipswich 78, Brighton 83, and Smith must score.
Yeah.
Forest 91, Newcastle 99, Millwall 04, Cardiff 08, Villa in 2015, and Palace 2016. So that's fact. It is really, it's beautifully poised. Obviously, Palace won 2-0 at Doncaster.
It's going to be a United City final, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. James emailed in to say, "Howdy Football Weekly. I love hearing people's messages to you when you drop them through an episode. So I thought I'd share one. Watching Plymouth beat Liverpool this week was quite emotional. It brought up memories of my dad, John Fahey, telling stories about when he played for Bedford Town in 1964. They were then in the Southern League, but they beat cup favourites Newcastle United 2-1, with Dad scoring both of the goals, past future manager Jock Wallace, who was keeping at the time. I'd give a kidney to get some footage or even better photographs. I understand why the paparazzi weren't out in force for this match, though. He went on to be the top scorer in the Canadian League for 2 seasons with the Serbian White Eagles, where he was driven to score by the fact fans would celebrate every single goal by invading the pitch and jamming money into his underwear. As long as we're talking, he also memorably dealt Sean Connery such a hard tackle during a charity match that Connery's manager stormed onto the pitch and tried to cancel the game. Love your work. Thank you, James. Beautiful email. Thank you, James, for that. Bit of AFL. Leeds beat Watford 4-0 at Vicarage Road, put them 5 points clear at the top of the championship, having played a game more than Sheffield United. Frank Lampard's Coventry moved to within 1 point of the playoffs. They beat QPR 1-0. It would be a pretty remarkable season if they do make it in. Leyton Orient showed no signs of a Man City hangover. They were 3-0 up against Mansfield, who have fallen off a cliff after half an hour, so it stayed. And Birmingham, against all odds and against the run of play, defeated Cambridge United 4-0. We had 2 shots. 2 shots, none on target. One of our players scored a volley own goal as good as the Pascal Gross one. You're like, how's that going? And then you watch the replay going, oh, come on, Liam. Don't put it there. Charlton beat Peterborough. Peterborough also hopeless, so that's the only thing going well for us. Walsall in League 2 had been running away with it. They drew 1-1 with Gillingham last night. Haven't won in 5. And so the door is open for a whole lot of clubs. Notts County, Bradford, Doncaster, Wimbledon, etc. On to any other business. Another busy couple of days for Ineos, Baz.
Yeah, Matt Lawton, I think it's Matt, reporting in the Times that further redundancies are planned at Old Trafford. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Dave Brailsford are apparently ready to let go another 100 staff. They have already, I believe, made Jackie Kay, the head of team operations, who's worked at the club for 30 years, made her redundant. News is also broken that the All Blacks rugby team are suing Ineos for pulling out of a sponsorship deal 3 years early. They I think it's worth £3.5 million a year. But Ineos just decided they're not going to pay anymore, or they haven't honoured the contract, so the All Blacks are taking them to court. Ineos think this is very unreasonable behaviour by the All Blacks, and all this is being blamed on economic challenges affecting the chemicals industry. Now, Ineos, they're not scraping by. Their latest accounts suggest they've made profits well over, I think, £1.5 billion. So big Sir Jim won't go hungry. But it's quite sad what's happening at Old Trafford. I get that maybe the staff numbers are bloated, but to let someone like Jackie go, who's giving her life to the club, it's indicative of an organisation that has got no soul, I think. But maybe, I would never be cut out for the cutthroat world of business. So
you're telling me I'm Barry's Diary of a CEO. I would definitely listen. Philippe, you want to talk about Club World Cup ticket prices? This sounds exciting.
Oh, it's really exciting. As you know, FIFA is having and the organising committee are having loads of trouble trying to shift those tickets because they were very, very expensive, and as a result of that, the prices have been slashed. But there's a catch. Like if Max Rushden, and we know that from Bayern fans who had pre-booked their tickets. That's for the knockout round, right? So you pre-book, and it was very expensive. Like you were talking like 2,000 euros or something like that for all the games, including the final, and not in the top category. And now those tickets are available at a cut down price because nobody wants them in their right mind. Who would want to? And you think, okay, so I'm going to cancel my ticket, the old ticket, which I haven't paid for yet, but I'm going to buy the new one at the better price. That makes sense. Yeah, but if you do that, you're going to have to pay FIFA a cancellation fee. And it's not going to be £1.50. It's going to be 10% of the value of the expensive ticket, which means that if you've purchased, like, say, a package for 1,500 euros and you want to buy the new package, which is at 400 euros, you're still going to have to pay 10% of 1,500 euros to FIFA, because they got the prices wrong and they got the competition wrong anyway. And by the way, should your club not qualify for the knockout round, this cancellation fee will be kept by FIFA. There is no small profit. I think the Brailsfords and Ratcliffes and Infantinos of this world, they all belong together. They have the same mind. They don't realize that it's peanuts, that they manage to antagonize people for peanuts. But they still do it because there's an extra euro, an extra dollar, an extra quid to be made. And so they do it, and they run over people, they eat people and disgorge them, and they do things with tickets, which is admittedly not as serious as sacking people who've given their lives to a football club. That's for sure. But it's still quite revealing of who they are, really.
It's all the same trough, isn't it?
Yeah. Loads of snouts, big trough, and us.
And us staring at the trough going,
exactly.
Down that trough. What are we on this farm? I don't know. David says, daft stato question. What's the maximum number of substitutes that's ever been used in a competitive professional match? Hearts had 7 tonight in the Scottish Cup. This was a couple of days ago. 5 regular, 1 concussion sub, plus 1 extra time sub. Only 3 outfield players did the full 120 minutes. 7 might be the most. That's what we think. It would have to be post 5 subs being introduced, which was 2020. So yeah, 7 feels like a Vets game. Feels like a game I play and no one plays. No, rolling on and off.
You could get into like the reads with this one because, for instance, the Inter Fiorentina game the other day that got resumed a couple of months after it was paused because of Eduardo Bove's cardiac arrest. Both teams were allowed to make swaps to the team that was playing on the day that the game was paused because of lots of things. Some of those players, teams have had injuries, new signings, things like that. So do those count as additional subs? I feel like if this was a question for the knowledge, this is the sort of angle we'd be getting into.
No, actually, there were 2 good points actually from the last pod. Oh no, one on that note of a game that's being replayed, as Jez said, should Everton be forced to have Sean Dyche in charge instead of Moyes for the rescheduled derby? Seems only fair. And KD did say equal parts disappointed and disgusted, Max, that you went with Nostrabasmus instead of Bastradamus when mentioning Barry's clairvoyancy. Is that decision? Has that decision kept you up at night ever since? It is for me. I mean, there are other things keeping me up at night, but let me tell you, if I do get a spare hour where I've got my own time, I will think about that. I knew in the moment I'd got it wrong, but sometimes we all make mistakes. Anyway, that'll be for today. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nicky.
Thanks.
Cheers, Philippe.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Max.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Phil Maynard. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.